Today I wanted to talk about the over-under number for the number of members in each conference to finish, not start, finish in the top 25 this year. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude, and if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I do college football videos every single day, so if you love college football, you're going to like this channel. I think there's some teams from last year that finished in the top 25 won't do it again this year, and some teams that didn't finish in the top 25 will finish in the top 25. So I wanted to see how the conferences are going to look as far as how differently they're going to look at the end of the season compared to last season, because let's face it, last year was a COVID season. It was kind of crazy. So I'm going to rank each conference as far as the over-under number for the amount of members that could finish in the top 25 this year. Remember, it's how you finish, not how you begin. Number one might surprise you. I think the Big Ten will be number one as far as the amount of members that will finish in the top 25 in this season. I have 4 locks in the Big Ten: Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Yes, I think Penn State bounces back and they finish the season ranked. Of course, Ohio State has owned the Big Ten, so I definitely expect them to finish in the top 25. Wisconsin, I have them as my favorite to win the West, so they should finish in the top 25. And Iowa will be their main competitor in the Big Ten West, so I expect them to finish in the top 25. Now, the teams that I think could finish in the top 25, but I don't have them locked. Indiana. I'm not totally convinced that Indiana will finish in the top 25. They had a great season last year, but it was condensed. This is going to be a longer, tougher schedule for Indiana. Can they get through that schedule and finish in the top 25? I don't know. I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no. Also, Michigan. They restructured Jim Harbaugh's contract and loaded it with incentives. So I'm not willing to totally count Michigan out. They could finish in the top 25. 2 other teams in the West. Northwestern, they also had a great season last year, but they have a lot of questions on the offense. And just like Indiana, their schedule is going to be a full schedule. Did they just benefit from a shrunken schedule last year? It could be. I don't know. And the last team, Purdue. The game between Purdue and Northwestern last year, I think, was a turning point for both teams. Northwestern barely won that game, ended up getting into the top 25 and finished the season strong. After that loss, Purdue struggled. It could be the exact opposite this year, and that's why I think Purdue could finish in the top 25. So I'm putting the over-under number for the Big Ten at 4.5. Right up there with the Big Ten is the SEC. This is almost like a 1A and a 1B. It's very, very close. I also have 4 locks for the SEC. Alabama, Ole Miss. Yes, I think Ole Miss is a lock to finish in the top 25. They have a great offense coming back. And Texas A&M and Georgia from the East. Now the question marks. Auburn. You just never know with Auburn. I don't have a lot of confidence in them, but sometimes they have a great season out of the blue. And they fired Gus Malzahn, so new coaching. We'll see what happens at Auburn. LSU could have a big bounce back season this year. Miles Brennan, a dark horse Heisman contender. LSU could very well finish in the top 25 and possibly contend for the SEC West. Now in the SEC East, Florida. Florida lost pretty much everybody from a great offensive team last year. And what happened? They still ended up with several losses. So Dan Mullen did the least with the most last year. Well, this year, he's losing most of that most. So maybe Florida's defense can keep them in some games. I don't know. That's why I have Florida as a question mark, finishing in the top 25. To go along right with them in the East is Missouri. I think Missouri actually gets better this year. I think they have the potential to finish in the top 25, but I'm not sure I want to lock them in just yet. So 4 locks, 4 questions. So the same with the SEC. The over-under for the SEC as far as teams finishing in the top 25, 4.5. Number 3 on this list, the ACC. Yeah, I think the ACC could be the 3rd best conference this year. Now, they don't have as many locks as the Big Ten and the SEC in my opinion. Just 3 locks: Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina. But they have a lot more questions that could finish in the top 25. Florida State is trending in the right direction. They could somehow sneak and finish in the top 25 this year. I I think Louisville will have a big bounce back year as well. They have a lot of talent coming back. It's can they be more consistent this year? If they can be more consistent, Louisville could finish in the top 25. And finally, the last team in the Atlantic, NC State. They had a big bounce back year last year. Pretty much flip-flopped their records from 4-8 to 8-4. If they can add just one more win to that, they could finish in the top 25 this year. Now, in the Coastal, I only have 2 question marks. Georgia Tech, their new coach, recruiting at a much better level. Their offense actually makes sense. They could sneak and grab some wins that a lot of people don't have them winning and end up in the top 25. Yes, the very bottom, but still it counts. And also, and I hate admitting this, Pitt. Yes, Pitt does have the talent to possibly, and I mean possibly, finish in the top 25. So the over-under that I'm setting for the ACC is 3.5. Number 4 on this list. This is the one that might shock you. The Pac-12. No, they're not at the bottom this year. I think they have 3 locks. Washington, Arizona State, and USC. But they also have 3 questions to go along with that. Oregon. I know a lot of people are hyping Oregon. I'm not buying it, but they could win enough games to finish in the top 25. I don't think they're winning the North, but they could still finish in the top 25. Also, UCLA. Chip Kelly has UCLA headed in the right direction. Can they contend for the Pac-12 South? I highly doubt it, but once again, might do enough to finish in the top 25. Then the last team, Utah. I was surprised at the step back that Utah had last year. They recruit at a decent level, and their schedule isn't brutal. I think there's enough wins on their schedule to where Utah could finish in the top 25. So the Pac-12 has 3 locks and 3 questions. So the over-under number for the Pac-12 for me is also 3.5. But because they have less questions, less possibilities to get in the top 25, that's why I rank them under the ACC. Finally, dead last, the Big 12. Only 2 locks, Oklahoma and Iowa State. But they also have a ton of questions to go along with that. Several teams that might finish in the top 25 and they might not. The first team I'm going to talk about, my team, West Virginia. They could very well finish in the top 25. The schedule is not brutal. They're out of conference, very manageable, and a win against Maryland and Virginia Tech are very doable, and it would look good on their scheduling as far as getting into the top 25 and finishing in the top 25. Next team, TCU. You can't ever count out Gary Patterson. They had a bad year last year, but he has the pieces in place to have a bounce back year and have a top 15 team. Kansas State, Chris Kleiman, his first year at Kansas State, he had them ranked, and of course West Virginia knocked them out of the rankings. They still finished with 8 wins. They did have a big step back last year. Skylar Thompson, their quarterback, he's back, so I'm not counting out Kansas State. 2 more teams, Texas. Texas has talent. They recruit well, but they fired Tom Herman and bring in Steve Sarkisian. That was a bad move. That was terrible. Why did you do that, Texas? But they have enough talent to where they could still finish in the top 25. And then finally, Oklahoma State. We saw their defense last year. They were supposed to be one of the best offensive teams last year, but it turned out to be their defense. Well, they lost Chuba Hubbard and Tylan Wallace. They still have Spencer Sanders, but he's so inconsistent you never know. So they might have to rely on that defense. But we saw last year that might be enough. So it's not for me to lock them in, but it's also not enough for me to completely discount them. So I have them as a question mark. So the over-under for the Big 12 is 2.5. That's a low number. 2 locks, 5 questions. I might actually redo this video as the season gets closer because things do change. So I'm going to keep my eyes out on that. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you on my next show.